Hello, and welcome to the Catching the Octopus podcast. Here, we will explore how connecting inward gives us an advantage outward. We openly talk about the obstacles and challenges and difficulties that life throws our way and how they become moments of gratitude and things that can benefit us when we look back on our lives. I'm your host, Naomi Hurley, and it is my mission to bring you top quality guests that will share with you openly their obstacles and also the techniques they use to go inward that strengthens the way that they serve themselves and others at the highest level. Thank you for joining. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Catching the Octopus podcast. Today, I'm going to do a recap on my interview with Jeff Stewart. Now, Jeff blew my mind. It was such a great conversation. He had so much to share and has been part of leadership roles and serving as a leader for majority of his career, right? He also established the Southwest Leaders, which is a mentor-menteeship program, which I've been a part of, and it's just absolutely brilliant. Not only did I have a great mentee that I've been able to work with who really reciprocated some of that, right? I think I was the mentee and she was the mentor for some of it and vice versa, but I've built a really great, strong connection with someone that I think I will have a long-term relationship and friendship with. But also he, as part of the program, is delivering key elements and key topics for discussion, for challenging. And as part of that, there's Leadership 30s and Leadership 60s. If you want to become a part of that, just reach out to Jeff and put your name down. He can put you on his mailing list. They are fantastic. They're like 30-minute or 60-minute Zoom calls where he actually gets a collaborative approach of some really great leaders, really inspirational and really diverse from all different backgrounds. And we talk, or they talk, and I listen, and sometimes I contribute, but they talk about what leadership means and what sort of topic is there and what's going on. And some of the key elements that I took from my interview with Jeff was, a few key phrases that really could be fleshed out into some great content. And one of them was, the stop, start, begin, or commence element. So he does this with his teams a fair bit, right? So instead of always looking at what's great and what's not great, he sort of mixed that up a little bit. And when they're in their meetings, they actually list out, and he's done this as part of the leadership program as well in some exercises, and put, what do we need to stop doing as a team, as a business, as a leader? And if you've got a pen and paper handy now, I suggest you do this exercise because it's absolutely brilliant. Right, so what do we need to stop doing? Then they move on to saying, so what do we need to start doing? So as a team, as a business, as a leader, what do I need to start doing, or do we need to start doing to actually become more effective, to improve, to overcome this next obstacle? It can be used for strategic planning, or it can be used for contingency planning, all of those sorts of spaces. So once we've identified what we can stop doing and what we need to start doing, we can also identify what should we continue doing. What has been really helpful? So it can identify then those benefits, the opportunities, and the things that have been done well, so that they don't become lost in the noise and lost in the crowd, right, when people are talking. He also talked about setting up teams that had really strong cultures. And the way he did that was straight up in the meetings, putting culture as a focal point, making sure that people weren't just following the organizational values, but the team themselves had some core values that everyone aligned with, that everyone got on the same page with, and that helps people progress through. And I mentioned to him when we're talking leadership in groups and teams that if you're not leading the team, someone is, right? There's someone leading the team. And he kind of acknowledged that and said, well, that's why it's important to get those values aligned. That's why it's important to be in a space that has that strong culture. But some people avoid the conversations they need to have and the actions they need to take to improve the culture. Or some people actually are influencing in some way a culture that they don't want. You know, there's the purple circle with people that have really strong, close relationships that seem to band together and become a little inner network within the bigger group, that other people can see as being unable to infiltrate or to be seen, they see them as getting unfair advantages. Even if that's not the case, that can still be a perception. And once someone has a perception that there's a group that they're not included in, that they're excluded from, that is getting more benefits and does have more opportunities and advantages, you know, that starts affecting the psychological safety. That starts affecting that enoughness feeling, and can also then start affecting emotional intelligence, the contributions, creativity, whole range of things. You know, it can even affect productivity because they feel like, well, I don't know why I'm busting my butt. You know, it's not going to be recognized or not seen because I'm not in that circle. I'm not in that group. And it can be great to have a purple circle because then you've got really close relationships. But overall, it's not effective for a really strong, healthy, robust culture. So if that's what you're after, that's one of the things that you could look at. We also talked about reflection and how reflection is important. And that's important when we're looking at the culture, you know, that's important when we're looking at the stop, start, and continue. It's important in everything around personal and professional and business growth. We need to do reflection. But, you know, Jeff talked about how that can be really confronting.
If you're enjoying this podcast and you want Naomi or any of her guests featured on your podcast or as a keynote speaker at your next event, you'll find their contact details included in the show notes. If you'd like to learn more about how you can work with Naomi individually or as part of your strategy to improve leadership in your business, then review the courses, offers and services at getupandgoconsulting.com.au.
And especially if we don't have the right level of emotional intelligence or the right level of enoughness within us that we're comfortable with and accepting with, self-reflection can actually be triggering as well. So it can be very confronting for us and we can actually be triggered by it. And so many leaders and so many people avoid it. They avoid having those conversations, or they avoid actually looking within themselves. You know, I had a corporate client call me a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about doing some 360-degree feedback. And they were talking about, you know, a questionnaire that could be done that could give them the feedback. And I said, look, I can do your questionnaire, no worries, and I'll get you some good feedback. But if you really want to know, really want to know what you could improve on and what areas you're doing well at and doing not so well at, then the best bet is to have those conversations. You know, I said, I can come and have those conversations as a third party and pick up from people, give them a space where they feel safe, where they know that what they're sharing is confidential, and let them open up. Instead of just ticking a box of, you know, always, sometimes, never, or maybe and yes and no, sit down and really get a good feel from them. And then putting together a bit more robust information that you can actually go and grow with and develop with. And, you know, that person was open to the challenge. It was like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, but not everyone is. Not everyone is open to being confronted and being challenged. And I actually raised with Jeff that I had realized in the weeks prior that I'd given advice to people, that probably didn't want my advice. And that was something I had to reflect on and go, oh, you can't just run around trying to help everyone, right? Not everyone wants your help. So, you know, I gave advice, and it's actually the relationship's not as strong as what it was. It's not ruined. It's still a great relationship. But when I gave the feedback, it was triggering. It was confronting. And I didn't think that through in that space. You know, it wasn't a therapy client and it wasn't a corporate client. It was just in a network. So we need to recognize that as well as leaders when we're working with our team members. You know, our delivery is everything. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. And delivering to our team members in a way that could be too confronting could trigger them and send them the wrong way. So we need to be conscious of that. You know, when Jeff was speaking about the values, he spoke about being exceptional and ethical and brave. And I thought that was really, really great. And the bravery wasn't about being a copper and going out and saving the day. The bravery was about having the conversations. The bravery was about pulling the elephant into the room and talking about it. And the bravery was about that confronting stuff, going through that, doing the reflection and doing the work and going through and seeing how we can improve ourselves and make ourselves better. Now, Jeff also spoke about that healthier, happier, and more productive workforce. So when people are being brave in the workforce, that's what's coming through, right? They're being healthier and happier and more productive. And one of the key things he said that really resonated with me, it's the 1% changes. And when I work with people on habits and changing habits, that's exactly what we talk about, right? It's the 1% change. If you've got 1% change every day or regularly, then it's going to create exponential growth, right? It's going to compound. And so as a leader, we don't have to go in and change the world, but if we can make those little 1% changes regularly, it's not a big change that people will get fearful of and have apprehension for, but it is enough to actually get people to start developing and growing, and it will end up having the big rewards at the end of the day. So Jeff also spoke about removing the obstacle of not being open to looking at things from different perspectives. I kind of did touch on that a little bit. You know, we tend to sometimes think that our perspective is the only perspective. You know, if I see it like this, then other people are bound to see it like this as well. But that's not always the case. So when we are interacting with our team members, or even when people are interacting with us, you know, we need to have that inner knowing that just because we see something in a particular way, it doesn't mean everyone else does. And in the leadership psychology program that I've developed and I've put together, one of the elements we do talk about is perception. And we talk about the Laurel and the Yanny sound. So if you haven't heard about that, you can Google that, or you can sign up to the program and go a bit deeper. But what we talk about in that is there was a sound phenomenon that some people heard Yanny, some people heard Laurel. And that it was the same sound, exactly the same sound, but people were hearing it differently. And that was purely because of the shapes of ears and different perceptions in the brain and the way sounds were heard. So if people are hearing sounds differently, the things that they see differently are endless, and it's not something that they control. It's not something they think about and go, I'm actually going to be devil's advocate here and I'm not going to agree and I'm going to have a different perception on everything. That's not how it works. There's some things that we're actually wired for cognitively in our brains, in our hearing, in our sight, in all of our senses is how we find things and how we learn things. And they can be really different for different people. So it's about recognizing that and understanding that our perceptions may not be the same as others. And so we need to be conscious and open to being able to look at things from other people's perspectives, to ask the questions to find out and put ourselves in their shoes. The last thing I just wanted to touch on was success helps others become better people. And for him, that's what success is. Ultimately, success for him is helping others become better. And that's a really great community level thinking. And that's really what we're here to do as leaders, right? We're here to serve others. A really good leader will actually put the community level thinking, grab it in and put the community first when they're thinking about things. And what that means is they'll step outside of comfort zones. They'll have those conversations that aren't really fun to have. They'll tackle the cultural issues. They'll put things in place to make sure that the workplace is psychologically safe. They'll break down those unhelpful relationships or purple circles. They will do what needs to be done to be able to create an environment where people can come together, can be psychologically safe, can perform, and can grow at their highest level. So if you haven't listened to Jeff's interview, go back and have a listen. It was great. There was so much knowledge that he shared. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it too. Thanks for joining in and listening to this episode of Catching the Octopus podcast. It's been great having you here. And if you'd like to go and like and subscribe and maybe even leave a 5-star rating if you think it's worth it, I'd really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.